Please welcome Michelle Rhee and Kevin Johnson. Well, I can't tell you how pleased we are to have you here. This is a topic that's near and dear to all of our hearts and something that we're as committed, not as committed, but as passionate about as you are. Michelle, you've had an incredibly diverse education. You started out, you went to public school, then you went to Korea, then you went to private school, and then on to Cornell. Where was the spark along the way that drove you towards education?
Well, my father was actually probably the biggest influence in my life as it pertains to my interest in public education, because he was a guy very different from other sort of Korean men of his generation who wanted to raise us with a sense of social justice and what was right and wrong. And so when we were young, he always used to say to us, you know, what you have in life is not because you are special, because you're smart or talented. It's because you were lucky enough to be born into this family. And the kids in inner city, you're not so special.
That's the way dads are.
But he would juxtapose that and say, you know, there are kids who are growing up in inner city Toledo who don't have the same things, and it's not because they don't have the ability or anything like that. It's just because of the luck of their circumstance and birth. And so he raised us to sort of really always be working for the underdog and working towards equity and equality. And when I was in high school, I attended a private school. My high school boyfriend.
This is the first time I've heard of this.
His mother was a teacher, and she taught in the inner city. And so I went in to her classroom and started volunteering. And when I saw just the incredibly stark differences in circumstance of what those kids faced every day when coming to school versus what we had in the private school, it just seemed to me like such an injustice that it really sort of sowed the seeds for my entire career.
Kevin, you had a completely different sort of education. Where did this spark for education and commitment to it come for you?
Well, I had a high school girlfriend who really introduced me.
Actually, he told me about her.
No, I don't. First of all, it's great to be back in Cleveland. Incredible story. So thanks for that. So for me, you know, I grew up in a really poor neighborhood and went to public school my whole life. One elementary school, one middle school, one high school. And basketball was my ticket out. I was able to get a scholarship to a great academic university, Cal Berkeley. And I had always thought I was a good student. I got B grades or A's and did all my homework and all the things that the teachers were telling me to do. And when I got to Berkeley, for the first time I was sitting in an English class as a freshman, and there were 30 students in this English class, and I walked in a little bit late, and they were all engaged in a very robust dialogue. And they were talking about this word, euphemism. And I had never heard of the word, and the kids are asking the teacher questions, and I didn't understand what the questions that the students were asking the teachers, let alone the response that the teacher was giving, the professor was giving to the students. And I made a commitment at that point in time. It became very clear that I was woefully unprepared for a 4-year university and the rigor that went with it. And I made a commitment for the rest of my life. If I was successful, I was gonna go back to my neighborhood and make sure that all kids would understand what the word euphemism was. And then secondly, you know, fight on behalf of kids, especially in underserved communities, because it's not fair to them when they're told they're getting an A or B and you think that you can compete with other kids up and down the state and you get there and you're so far behind. So that was other than my high school girlfriend, that was the key.
Michelle, your sort of first breakout, I guess, was going to teach in Baltimore, and then after that, founding the New Teacher Project. Tell me about the New Teacher Project and how it worked and if it's still what's going on now with it.
So when I founded the New Teacher Project, the main kind of thrust of education in the country at that time was the fact that the U.S. Department of Education had come out saying we're going to need 2 million new teachers over the next 10 years, and in most urban public school districts across the country, they could not get enough people to even apply for those jobs. And at the time, Teach for America was up and running, was doing extraordinarily well. And school districts were calling Teach for America and saying, where are you getting these people? How are you getting them? Send us some more. And the founder of TFA, Wendy Kopp, said to me at the time, well, you know, you should do something about this. You should start an organization and try to help districts, you know, recruit better teachers and more teachers to come into education. So at the time, we thought it sounded like a good idea. We knew what Teach for America was doing, which was trying to recruit college graduates who did not major in education to come in. And what we thought was that there was a real potential in terms of going after people who were mid-career professionals. So people who were doctors, lawyers, investment bankers who had you know, a career in another sector.
CEOs.
CEOs, exactly.
I didn't know a euphemism meant either.
Thank you.
But people, especially people who had good content knowledge in math and science and technology, the high need subject areas, to come into to education. And so it was a fascinating experience to see. Actually, it seems like such an obvious thing to do. Okay, let's go and broaden the pool and get these talented people into the classroom. But what was amazing to us were all of the barriers that existed. I mean, we would routinely get applications for our programs from little astrophysicists from MIT who, because of the laws and regulations, were not allowed to teach high school physics. And so what we did for the first 10 years that I led that project was to try to work with states and districts to create the kinds of environments and laws and policies, et cetera, that would allow the best talent to come into teaching, and particularly to be teaching at the highest need schools in the community.
What's going on with it now?
Well, I'm happy to say that they've flourished since I've left.
Great.
I think that the people who've succeeded in me have taken the organization to heights that I never would have been able to. So they really have. They've now have 400 employees, a budget of nearly $40 million a year. So it's pretty tremendous.
Kevin, you know, in your rookie year, just after your rookie year in the NBA, that disaster year in Cleveland, you know, you went and founded Mount Hope, or St. Hope. Where did that come from?
So two things. Let me clear up the Cleveland scenario really quickly. I was from California, and all I knew was sunshine.
Yeah.
Can you
Basket's still 10 feet tall.
Yeah, but you don't understand when you're from California, and it was October of like 1987, and I was in Cleveland from October to February with no sun. Like, that was difficult on a young guy who didn't know what the word euphemism meant. So it just took me a little while to adjust, and I want to thank Wayne Embry and the folks who traded me to Phoenix, because that was a really nice alternative.
Mark Price wants to thank you too.
Absolutely. So, you know, if you go back in all seriousness, even literally to the word euphemism, that's really what inspired St. Hope. Because I'm in this college class, I don't know what this word means. I try to go back to my dormitory and look up the word in the dictionary. I couldn't spell it because it doesn't spell like it sounds. It was a rough first couple days. So anyway, I get through it, but if I didn't have sports and didn't have the confidence of a peer group, it would have been very difficult for me to flourish, you know, at Cal. So at that point in time, I go back to my community, the first year I'm in the league, and I start St. Hope on July 1st, 1989. And the mission of St. Hope was to really revitalize the urban community that I'm from through public education, economic development, civic leadership, and arts. So very holistic. Jeffrey Canada has the Promised Neighborhoods, I think most of you have heard of. So very similar to that back in 1989. And the whole objective was, one, to disrupt the vicious cycle. Because when I would come back each summer, the kids when I went to college, it was lonely because there was nobody from my community in college. They didn't look like me, they weren't from my neighborhoods. And I was thinking, God, and these other kids all knew each other from summer camp and did all these things together that seemed like to build a community and a relationship. I said, if I can go back to my community and create an environment of really high expectations where young kids can be exposed to rigor and academic and go off and graduate and go to college, regardless of whether they had sports or not, that starts to level the playing field. And I think we all know that education is a great equalizer, and we say that. But for me, it was personal, that I wanted more kids to be able to go off to college and have their friends go with them. I would come back from the summer, and the friends that I went to high school with were on drugs, in jail, or dead. And the ones who were alive were having kids, and at this point in time, they were 6, 7, 8 years old, and you see the cycle just repeat itself year after year, year after year, and it became very clear that education was their passport out of that community into a much brighter future. So that's what inspired, St. Hope.
One of the things I think is interesting, so Kevin's whole idea around St. Hope was not every kid has the inherent talent to through athletics escape this neighborhood, but every kid can get a high quality education and see a different life trajectory. And so his point was, let's build great public schools so that every kid has a shot. And so he very much downplayed sports and athletics. He never talks about it. He never picked up basketball after he retired. And so when I first met him and I went to Sacramento and I sort of saw him in the schools, the kids only knew him as the mean guy who told them to tuck in their shirts all the time, who sent them to detention for not doing their homework, et cetera, et cetera. And the first time that I saw a kid have an interaction with him where, the fact that he was an NBA star came up, the kid was like, you're a basketball player. And Kevin sort of, sitting back, and he's like, "You're too short. There's no way. Absolutely not." And literally, the staff had to find one of his basketball cards and pull it out to this kid, but he just couldn't imagine Kevin in that circumstance. So I think that's one of the great things about him, is that when he went back into the community, he really was trying to build a different set of values amongst the kids to focus on education as opposed to athletics.
Let me go right to an interesting period in your life in Washington. You obviously had a huge impact there. What do you think is, looking back on it, what do you think that your major contributions were? And what, if anything, would you have changed?
Let's see. I think we accomplished a lot. We did not accomplish nearly as much as I wanted to.
Of course, never do.
Or thought that we could have if we would have had a little bit more time. I think I am most proud of the just sort of shattering the expectations that people had of the children in the district. I think that when I got there, the children in the district, and the school district, was the lowest performing school district in the country. It was the most dysfunctional in a lot of ways, and I think many people believed that you couldn't do anything about it. That because of poverty, because of the violence in the community, because of all of these sort of environmental factors, that there was no way that kids could be achieving at high levels. And I think our children showed them different. I mean, over a 3-year period of time, we saw more academic growth amongst our kids than in the 12 years prior to that.
Tell them where the kids started academically in terms of student performance, because I think that's important.
Yeah, so just a couple of statistics about when I took over the schools. We had an achievement gap between where our white students were performing and where our African American students were performing, a gap of 70 percentage points, 70. If you were a 9th grader entering into high school in our system, the probability that you would graduate from college was only 9%. And of all of the 8th graders in the city's schools, only 8% of them were on grade level in mathematics. 8%, which means that 92% of our kids did not have the skills and knowledge necessary to be productive members of society. So through our time there, we really did show that our kids were capable of so much more, as long as we as the adults in the system were making the right decisions and doing the right things, putting them in the right environments.
You both have had various confrontational discussions with unions. Why don't you talk a little bit about it?
So one of the stories that a lot of people don't know is when I did retire from the NBA, I moved back to Sacramento, my hometown, and we started a charter school from the ground up called PS7, a K through 8 elementary school, and it's doing really well, and I might talk about that in a moment. But at the same time we were starting this charter school, the elementary school, the high school that I graduated from, Sacramento High School, was about to be taken over by the state of California because it was underperforming for so many years in a row. The superintendent at this particular time, a gentleman named Jim Sweeney, who is my hero, he came to me and said, we don't have the answer to how you educate kids in underserved communities. He said, I'm just being honest. And I think if we give you this high school and the elementary school as charter schools, we know you can do a better job than we're doing. And I have to allow you to try to do that because we have been in the community for years. Right. So you fast forward, this high school, we unveil a proposal to the community of what we were going to do. We're going to turn this big, large, comprehensive high school into a small learning community, 3 or 4 small schools within a big school. I go speak to the teachers on December of 2002, and I get a standing ovation from the teachers. They're like, thank you so much for restoring the hope in education and teachers and being our supporter. I come back the next week for round 2, and the same people booed me. I'm thinking, like, what did I do, like, in a week? And what happened was the union propaganda started. Your jobs won't be safe. You won't make the same that you're making. It's a charter school, which is privatizing education. All the things that we hear over and over and over again. So at that particular time, remember, school taken over, about to be taken over by the state. Only 20% of seniors were graduating and going on to college at the time. 20% of seniors. The union sued us because we got the charter school. In 10 months, they spent $750,000 trying to preserve the status quo, not allowing us to do something different in the community, which had been failing kids year after year after year. They spent $750,000. So that was my first, real encounter with the union. A law firm, thank goodness, in Sacramento said, you know what, this is just an injustice. We're going to give you pro bono legal services, and we will take on the union for you. So thank goodness we preserved. You prevailed. You fast forward 7 years. I can go 4 years. Like when our first graduating class, we had 75% of our seniors get accepted to a 4-year college. Same kids, wow. Same neighborhood.
Congratulations.
And we overheard the union say at the time, we have to stop this because if it works, then what does that say about us? And it's in the capital of California. Holy crap, if it happens there, it'll start spreading throughout the state. So that was kind of my first encounter, and I am still known in Sacramento as probably public enemy number 1 until I married her.
Until I moved in.
Is she now 2?
I'm 2 now, yeah. They look at me as a moderate, and they like my father.
I would say this. I think teachers' unions in many ways get a bad rap. I mean, a lot of people come to me every day and say, well, what are we going to do to change the teachers' unions, and how can we make them more reform-oriented and that sort of thing? And I think that what we have to remember is that the teachers' unions are doing their job. Their job is to ensure that their members are protected and have the pay and privileges that they believe they deserve, et cetera. And so they're doing a marvelous job of that right now. I don't think we can begrudge them because they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. In fact, one of my favorite quotes is from Al Shanker, who is a former teachers union president, who said, when school children start paying union dues, that's the day that I'll start looking out for the best interests of school children, right? It was very honest. It was a very honest statement. And so I don't think the issue is, what should unions be doing differently? They're doing exactly what they were designed to do. The problem in my mind is not that unions exist or that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. The problem in my mind is the fact that you've got a very organized, very well-resourced interest group that's out there advocating for what they want to happen. But we don't, on the other side, have a national organized interest group that's advocating on behalf of children. So in the absence of that, you're going to end up with laws and policies that are very skewed towards one side. And I think that if we as the American public come together and start a movement and an interest group that's looking out for kids, then we can bring balance to that equation. So that's part of the reason why I started my new organization, Students First, to do exactly that.
She didn't really answer the full union question, but that's
I did. Let me say one more thing on this, which is
I'm
that...
getting her warmed up for you.
No.
I appreciate that.
Is that I just also think that this is very important. There's a big difference between rank and file teachers and what they believe and kind of teachers union leadership. And when you talk to everyday teachers who are in the classroom, they often know that the system needs to change. They more than anyone else are just cannot stand it when they see ineffective colleagues being kept in the system year in and year out. It frustrates them more than it frustrates almost anyone else. So there is no group that has more of an intolerance for ineffective teachers than effective teachers. And so part of what I think needs to happen also is that teachers who are not union presidents or building reps, but just everyday teachers, they need to become a part of this discussion and dialogue. We need to hear more from them because effective teachers in our public schools today are the heroes of this country. What they do every day is tremendous, and they are so underappreciated. And I think they have to be a driving force in this dialogue and in this reform effort.
Kevin, I've heard both of you guys use the word expectation about education. How does that play into the greater scheme of education?
So I think, unfortunately, you have in many schools, you have teachers who don't believe that all kids can learn or all kids can do as well as other kids. And I think what we aim to prove in many reform-minded folks and many great teachers, it's just this belief that high expectations is that every single kid can do equally as well as any other kid in any other neighborhood as long as they have access to a high quality education. It's not that complicated. This is the American dream that we were all promised, that you work hard, you get a good education, you go off and you earn a living and do all those sorts of things. Unfortunately, that promise is being deferred and often not realized in many of our communities around this country. So when I started our elementary school, PS7, have you guys heard of KIPP schools, by show of hands? So our elementary school, PS7, was modeled after KIPP. And the pillars are high expectations, choice and commitment, more time, focus on results, and power to lead. The high expectation one is the most important one. If I was interviewing Michelle to essentially be a teacher at our school, we'd ask her a couple questions. And if she said, kids can't learn because they don't have two parents at home, or kids can't learn because they're from this poor neighborhood and kids in that neighborhood don't do well, or kids won't learn because they're poor and poverty plays a real role. That's just not our belief. Those factors are critical, but we believe if you create high expectations, anything is possible. So at PS7, the interesting thing is we are kindergartners. So if you go to PS7 and you visit our kindergarten school, on the outside of the kindergarten door, it will say 2027, the year they're graduating college. You can't tell those kids any different. They have taken more college trips than you and I have, I'm not kidding. Every 3 or 4 weeks, they take some trip to some college. I was at my alma mater, Cal Berkeley, and I'm looking, and these kids are, hey, Mayor, hey, Mr. Johnson. These are PS7 kids. I'm like, what are you guys doing on a college campus? But that exposure is so important, and it's that belief and high expectation that ultimately makes the big difference. And let me close with this. At this elementary school, Michelle talked about an achievement gap. Do most folks know what an achievement gap is? Yeah. So they talk about an achievement gap. So typically, if African-American kids are graduating high school, they're usually at the same level as white kids in 8th grade. That's around the country. It's horrible, terrifying. So in Sacramento, we have an achievement gap, 161-point achievement gap in Sacramento, 161 points. Over the last 8 years, we've moved up 5 points. It will take, at that pace, 258 years to close. I'm not going to be around, 258 years to close the achievement gap. At this elementary school, our scores when we first started were here, and here's was the scores of everybody else. After 3 years, we got rid of the achievement gap. Now, the kids are performing. There's a reverse gap at our elementary school, literally a reverse gap. This elementary school is a top school in the city. 95% African Americans and Latinos, 80% free and reduced lunch. Don't tell me that kids can't learn from poor neighborhoods. Don't tell me the color of your skin, the zip code, is going to determine your outcome.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Michelle, let's say a couple words about last in, first out.
So last in, first out is a policy that dictates how schools and school districts have to lay teachers off in a time of a budget crunch. So first of all, let me just say that you never want to see cuts to education happening. You never want to see layoffs occur, but they are a reality across the country right now. And unfortunately, we, in lots of states across the nation, have rules and regulations that mandate last in, first out, which means if you are the last teacher hired, you must be the first teacher fired, regardless of performance. So there is no look at all to how effective a person is. It is just if you're the last person in the door. And this law has incredibly detrimental impacts on kids. There is no doubt about it. So first of all, the research shows that when you lay teachers off by seniority only, that you end up losing some of your best and most highly effective teachers in the entire district. The second is that you end up having to lay off more teachers and disrupt more classrooms because the junior teachers who are laid off actually get paid less money, so you have to lay more of them off to close the budget gap. And the last is that it disproportionately negatively impacts the lowest performing and highest need schools in the district, because those are the schools that typically have the most new teachers. So you have well-to-do schools that are kind of the places that everyone wants to flock to. And once you become a teacher there, you don't leave because it's a sort of, a great place to be. Those schools in a district can be untouched when the budget cuts come. And then the schools in the inner city, the ones that need the help the most, are decimated by the budget cuts. So for a variety of reasons, last in, first out does not make any sense. And so part of what we're doing at Students First is we are lobbying legislatures across the country to try to change these laws.
Tell them the states that you made the difference in.
Well, when we first started Students First, there were only 3 states across the country that said that when you lay teachers off, you must lay them off by quality instead of seniority. And our goal was to try to triple that number and go from 3 states to 9 states. We actually exceeded that goal, and last legislative session, we went to 11 states across the country who now said you have to do it by quality. And there are about 5 to 7 more states we believe that will pass that law in this coming legislative session. So we're making some real progress on it.
Congratulations. I got 2 more questions, and then we're going to throw it open to the audience. First of all, a guy question. You have been an NBA All-Star. You've played on Dream Team 2. You've played in the NBA Finals. You've dunked over some of the greatest basketball players in all time. What's your greatest thrill and memory from your professional sports career?
There's probably 3 or 4. One, being drafted. I was a first-round draft pick out of UC Berkeley, which doesn't happen that often, and it was by Cleveland. So I'm very thankful to this community for drafting me number 7 in the first round. Probably number 2 was being a part of the team that played in the NBA Finals in 1993 against Michael Jordan. Unfortunately, it didn't work out quite like I would have preferred, but nonetheless, that was a highlight. I still have nightmares about that, just so you know. And then thirdly, you mentioned a dunk. So from an individual standpoint, I had a pretty cool dunk on a guy that was 7 feet tall, and his name was Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon. And I got to tell you how that happened real quick.
Yeah, go.
Can you indulge me just in like just
in
one?
His guy
You
moment.
think I've hit a responsive chord here?
You said a guy moment, right?
Yeah.
So I'm taking advantage of. So we're playing against the Houston Rockets in the Western Conference Finals. And I'm penetrating to the basket, a decisive game, and I pass the ball to Charles Barkley, and he comes down, and Hakeem Olajuwon blocks it. So I get the ball on the other end, we come back again, I penetrate, and I pass it to AC Green. He goes in, and Hakeem blocks it. Team sport. So I come down the next time, and I juke this guy named Kenny the Jet, and I I pass it to Dan Marley going up for it, and he blocks it. So at this point, we're down 5 points. It's like 2 minutes left in the game. And I just like made my mind up that when I get the ball at the other end of the court, I'm gonna come down, and it doesn't matter what happens, somebody's gotta show what you're supposed to do to this guy named Akeem Olajuwon. So I get the ball. You guys know who Kenny Smith is, the guy who hangs out with Charles Barkley? Kenny the Smith, Jet, something like that. He was trying to guard me, so I shook him, and he went that way. And then I'm going to the basket.
You want to stand up?
So, you guys okay over? So I'm going to the basket, and there's Akeem Olajuwon, and I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me kind of with a little snicker, right? So I take another dribble. He looks at me. I look at him. I jump. He jumps. I'm thinking like, oh my God, what am I about to do? So we both are going up, and at that moment, I'm like, I might have to pass this. And all of a sudden, he starts going down, and I'm still going up. Boom! I dunk it on him. Wait. So I dunk it on him, and I'm excited, and he fouls me, and the referee calls a foul, and my other teammates are like, that's what we should have tried to do instead of him blocking the shot, and I'm all excited, and I'm at half court. You know, I'm just jumping up and down. I got fouled. And all of a sudden, I see this big shadow coming. And I'm like, I look, and it's him. He goes, you got me, little mind. Don't think about ever trying to do that again, little mind. And me, I said, I only got to do it once. So that was my highlight.
All right. Now, just a question for both of you. I described you as the ultimate power couple. You have been front and center in the press. You both have very high visibility. How do you manage it as a couple? And we're all going to take notes.
I just say, yes, dear.
Can I make a further suggestion?
Please do.
4 phrases.
I'm ready.
You're right. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. I love you.
Go ahead, Anthony.
You know, I think part of the reason why we were sort of drawn to each other, from the get-go, was we have very similar interests. We have very similar working styles. So I'm a little bit of a workaholic, and that's what I'm known for. I'm constantly on my BlackBerry. I'm returning people's emails, et cetera. And I remember when I first met Kevin, he was trying to talk me and my organization, the New Teacher Project, into coming out to Sacramento. And so, sent me a couple emails, and finally I said, okay, I gotta listen to this guy. He's a famous guy. So I went out and we sort of did an analysis, and we decided it didn't make sense for us to enter into SAC. So I remember it was late at night one night, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I shoot an email off to him. I'm just like, sorry, we've decided that we can't go into Sacramento. I wish you the best of luck. What you're doing with St. Hope is amazing. So I go about my business. I go to wash my face. I'm about to go to bed, and I hear this bing bong on my computer. Like, who is up at 2 o'clock in the morning emailing me? And it's him. And he sends me an email back, which I was shocked about. This guy's working this late. And the email has one word, and it says, no. And I said, this was not a yes or no question. I was just telling you that we could not do this. And so I said, I sent him an email. I said, what do you mean no? He said, that is unacceptable. You will be coming to Sacramento. He did not take no for an answer back then. He still rarely takes no for an answer now. But I think sort of, we both care so passionately about what we're doing. We love what we do every day. And, people always say to us, well, what are your hobbies? What do you do for fun? And we always say, we work, and we spend a lot of time. I mean, even when we're home after dinner and we sit down together, we're talking about work, and we're talking about giving each other ideas for, how we can do things better and that sort of thing. So I think because our work lives are so kind of intermingled in many ways, it helps us kind of the rest of our lives as well.
I'll just add one quick thing. So the fact that we both have similar values makes it so much easier. and then we're wired very similar. We're both somewhat introverted, believe it or not. I mean, we do these things when we're supposed to, but we'd much rather be at home, and we don't do all the parties and the festivities, and we just go home and watch West Wing. Or, what was the last, the Mad Men? Is that the
Mad
one?
Men.
That was her choice, by the way, but I watched it. Now we're watching Oz, which is my choice, and The Wire. But, you know, there's so much that we have in common that the way our personalities are wired, it makes it a lot easier. Neither one of us care a whole lot what people think about us. You know, a lot of times people say all these negative things, and people are like, how could you do it? We just really don't care. You know, we're in it because we want to make a difference in young people's lives. And we know if you take on the status quo and you're going to upset the apple cart, and people are going to say things that aren't true. And we have this unique ability to not really give.
He doesn't care when people say it about him, but when people say things about me, he's always like, do you want me to beat him up? Because I can't.
So the last thing I'll say on that is that, and I have a whole new found respect of just working mothers, because this lady does her normal job. She has 2 kids, 9 and 13, and literally she could be on the phone talking to somebody in her office, emailing somebody on her BlackBerry, helping her kids with the homework, cooking on the frying pan. Like if I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't believe it. So it takes a lot in a very special person to be able to do what she does, and then the fact that we have so much in common makes it a whole lot easier in terms of that. So we just kind of roll with it.
You're a great couple. Let's have, good.